Aloha Hawaii, I'm here at Salt in Kaka'ako with the beautiful and talented and inspirational Maria Quiban Whitesell. You may have seen her on Good Day LA or Fox 11 doing weather, but she is also the author of her book, You Can't Do It Alone. So mahalo, Maria, for being here today. I appreciate you.
I appreciate being here. Thank you for having an actual in-person interview because it's been so weird.
It feels great.
Coming back home after all these, couple years now because of the pandemic, but everything's on Zoom, obviously. But thank you, mahalo to you for having me here because I miss being on TV here in Hawaii. So this is my home.
Awesome. So speaking of home, so I know that you immigrated here from the Philippines when you were 10 years old and basically was raised here in Hawaii. So how was that for you moving from the Philippines here? Was English your first language or how was that?
Well, as you know, all of us Filipinos are a mix of so many different things. So I actually did grow up with English as my first language. But I do understand a lot of Visayan and a little bit of Tagalog.
So now that you're home, where are your go-to spots? Where are you eating? Where are you hanging out?
Well, it seems to change every time I come back. And I stayed this past weekend at the Kaimana Beach Hotel, which is one of my favorite spots. It really is, it's got that local feel, right? So it's kind of on the edge of Waikiki. So Tree Lanai is one of my favorite restaurants. So of course I had to stay there. So we were there for the weekend and it was amazing. It was beautiful. Yesterday we had Korean barbecue at Pearl.
Yum.
I think that's in Waipahu. It's Waipahu, right?
And I think there's one in Pearl Kai.
Oh, there's one in Pearl Ridge as well. But yes, I had the biggest stomach last night. I had all the michon I could eat because I cannot get michon in Los Angeles. So that's what I filled up on. And of course Zippy's like all-time favorite.
Of course.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, you moving to LA, being from Hawaii, I look at you as an inspiration because I went to school in LA. I went to Loyola Marymount University and I moved back home right before the pandemic hit. But now that I'm, the digital news host for Star-Advertiser, I am so honored to interview you. And so I wanted to talk about your experience from moving from Hawaii to LA and pursuing your career and what that was like for you.
Well, all of us here in Hawaii, we're so close to our family. Our ohana means everything. So for me, I was already working here at the NBC station, the local station here, and my mom and dad moved to the mainland. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I miss you so much. And of course they're saying we miss you so much. So I luckily found a job in California, in Los Angeles, and I've been there ever since. Do I want to come back? I would love to come back home in some way, but I now have roots in Los Angeles. So it's really my home. My heart will always have Hawaii as my home, but we surround ourselves with our biggest fans, and so my mom and dad are my biggest fans in California, and so you got to go where your family's at.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I truly believe too.
Yeah.
And on another note, I know you've been an inspiration to many, and you came out with this book, You Can't Do It Alone, and I know you've been through it with your life, with your children, raising your son, and I just want to hear a little bit more about that. What ignited you to write You Can't Do It Alone and share your story?
Well, first of all, it was so challenging because I'm a meteorologist, a broadcast meteorologist, so as you know on TV news, we don't write anything. What we do is ad libs, so writing something was a huge fear of mine. My late husband, Sean, was a writer by profession, and so when he was diagnosed with glioblastoma, that's that deadly, terminal, really the worst kind of cancer, brain cancer that you can have, we ask these questions of, why him? Why us, God?
Right.
We go to church, we try to be good people, and so we couldn't help but think that I wear a microphone every day. And he was a writer, so we thought, maybe we're supposed to write about this. Maybe we're supposed to shine a light on this horrible disease that there is no cure for. And so we made a promise to each other then that we would do our part in that. Maybe that's part of our purpose. And so when he finally just couldn't fight that battle anymore, I fulfilled that promise, and it took me a few years with a lot of help from him, I'm sure. And so I wrote this book because it is such a dark journey. And I was terrified, and I had a village of people supporting me, and I can only imagine what others could be going through if they didn't have even the kind of support I did. So this is the book I wish I had when we first learned of his diagnosis.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Sorry, I'm getting emotional.
Now I know. There are a lot of tears.
Yes.
shed writing this book, but there's some very funny moments in this book too, and there's a lot of Hawaii in it, of course, because this is a big part of who I am and the Aloha Spirit. So really there's something in it for everyone, not just if you have cancer, but just the feeling of loss and grief, and especially now because of the pandemic.
Right.
I think there are a lot of lessons that we learned in our life that can really apply to everyone.
And so with raising your son, he was 3 years old when everything happened.
Yes.
What is life like for you guys now? What do you instill in him so he knows, to move on and be strong?
Well, from the beginning, we, as soon as my husband was diagnosed with it, we sought counseling right away. I'm a huge advocate for therapy and counseling, and not just because you get a cancer diagnosis, but I think everyone should have counseling once they're born. I think once you start going to school, you should definitely see a therapist. I mean, we go to the dentist twice a year, we should go to a doctor for our heart and our emotions. And so without our family counselor, we couldn't have talked to him about, at 3 years old, what a cancer diagnosis was. And so with her help, we told him, Daddy has cancer. He's been diagnosed with glioblastoma. So as much as he could understand at 3 years old, but we never use words like sick. Because then, if somebody got sick, we didn't want him to think, oh, they're going to die.
Yes.
Right? So there's little things that we learned that made a huge difference in our lives. And to this day, we talk to her at least once a month.
Aww.
And we make sure that we have, have him to be well adjusted. And me too, don't get me wrong, we have hard days.
Yes.
We have some tough days and tough mornings, but we get through it, and with help from not just our therapist, but our family, our friends, my TV viewer family, we can get through anything. And of course, with the help of God. We have a very strong faith, and so we say a lot of prayers.
Aww.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited to read this book. So where can we get this book? Where can Hawaii go and purchase it and support Maria on this journey?
You know what? I was just at Barnes & Noble, and they're so kind at Ala Moana Shopping Center, and so they got a whole bunch of books. I signed a whole bunch, so go there and pick up your signed copy. And if they don't have any more, you can always order it online.
Well, I'm so excited to read. Mahalo, Maria.
Mahalo.
So much for giving us an insight. And like she said, there are so many things that you can learn in this book and her journey. So we're so looking forward to reading this, and we support you. Hawaii loves you as always, and welcome home.
Thank you. Mahalo.